right, welcome everyone to the Ocean Lab special live broadcast straight from the super remote waters of the San Ignacio Lagoon down in Mexico. Today we'll embark on a journey to discover the inspiring world of one of the ocean's most majestic creatures, the gray whale. Special thanks to Mike Lever and the entire Nautilus team for making these programs possible. I'm Kylie, your host today on this exciting adventure, coming to you live from the pristine coast of Baja California. Each year, this incredible lagoon serves as a sanctuary to the magnificent gray whales during their annual 12,000-mile round-trip migration between the Arctic and Mexico. And here in the protected waters of the San Ignacio Lagoon, they find refuge to breed, to give birth, and to nurture their young. We're going to meet up with some pretty incredible researchers today who are out on the lagoon as we speak to learn even more about gray whale biology, ecology, and learn a little bit what it looks like to be a marine biologist. If we're lucky, we hopefully might be able to see a few whales. Just a reminder that we're coming to you live from a very remote part of Mexico. So if the video looks a little bit lower quality than your favorite TV show, that's why. We welcome your questions. Just submit them using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to answer as many of them as we can. All right, I'm going to turn it over to our host, Dr. Chris Lowe of CSU Long Beach, and our resident marine mammal expert, Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe. How's the lagoon looking today, guys?
Hey, Kylie. Welcome, everybody. This is the incredible San Ignacio Lagoon, and it's actually a massive lagoon. So the peninsula of Baja formed about 5 to 10 million years ago as the Pacific plate was moving forward. The North American plate was ducting underneath that, pushing up this ridge, and it created the Baja Peninsula. On one side, we have the Sea of Cortez, and on this side, we have the Pacific Ocean. Now, we're about halfway down the peninsula, and there are a series of large lagoons that use this as a nursery for gray whales. So we've got with us our resident expert, Dr. Gwen Goodmanlowe, who's going to be teaching us about whales. We have another expert in our boat with us, our naturalist, Scarlett. We have Captain Adrian, who knows how to find the whales. And then we have our second camera, Roxanne. All right, so Gwen, why do the gray whales use these lagoons?
Well, there's one right there.
Oh, there's a whale.
Sorry. So the gray whales use the lagoons for two main reasons. One of them is not eating. So the pregnant moms come down here in the winter, just like, people like to go south in the winter for the warmth. Well, pregnant moms are coming down here to the nice, warm, shallow lagoons, and they're giving birth to their babies. The other reason why the whales come here is to mate. And so the males and the females that are ready will mate, and then they'll go, the female gets pregnant, she goes back up to Alaska to feed, and then next year she'll come down and she'll give birth to her calf in these nice, warm, shallow lagoons.
So now these whales are mammals like us.
They
right?
are mammals.
So
yes.
What are the key characteristics of mammals?
So key characteristics of mammals is that they have mammary glands, which is how the moms feed their young. Milk. They are air breathers. They have internal fertilization, just like us. They give live birth, so the babies come out of the mom as a real baby, not as an egg. And they are warm-blooded, or what we call endothermic. So that means they have to have a very high metabolism, just like us, in order to keep their body warm all year round. So they're not like fish. They're actually just like us.
Okay, so I felt the water here, and the water here in the winter is about 70 degrees. If you and I were in this water for an hour, we would probably freeze to death, right?
We would freeze, yeah, right.
So how are they able, and this is warm compared to Alaska.
That's right.
So
That's
how
right.
do they tolerate being in the water, being a mammal like us?
So whales have a very large blubber layer, and the blubber is an insulative layer. Oh, coming right up here. And that blubber layer allows them to stay warm when they're in the water all the time. The blubber also has a couple other functions, one of which is that they metabolize that blubber when they're not eating. So the times of the year like now, when they're not feeding at all, they're going to metabolize that blubber, and they'll either use it for energy, or in the case of the moms, they will use it to produce milk to feed their babies.
So now our body temperatures, we're endotherms too. So our body temperatures are 96.8. We keep our body temperature the same temperature. Takes a huge number of calories to do that. What's the body temperature of a whale?
Well, first of all, our body temperature is 98.6.
Oh,
Let's
no.
just start with
Okay,
that.
I'm cold. I'm cold relative to you.
But their body temperature is about the same as ours, which is between 98 and 100. And what was your question?
And so how do they keep their bodies so much warmer? So that it takes huge numbers of
That's
calories.
right. That's right.
So blubber has to be very, very calorie rich.
It is very calorie rich. And in fact, we figured out that they eat 13 million? No,
No, 1.5
1.5
million
million calories a day when they're in Alaska, not when they're here. When they're here, they're not really eating, but 1.5 million calories per day, which we figured out was 1,300 Big Macs.
Yeah, or in and out double doubles,
Or
depending on what
double
you're eating.
doubles.
And that's
Right.
animal style, right?
Right. So they're the babies themselves are putting on about 9 pounds an hour. Oh, nice preach. Up to about 60 pounds a day, 60 to 80 pounds per day for 3 months while they're here. That's all coming from the mom.
Exactly.
So that means that the mom is losing weight. Oh, another great.
So she's
Right.
investing all of that blubber energy that she has, converting it to milk,
That's right.
and they're just packing on the weight. So how much fat is in that milk?
It's about 60% fat. So that's compared to the milk that you drink, which is about 2%.
Oh, spy off. Oh, so hey,
So-
why do they do?
Wow, that's a great question, and nobody really knows, but we call it spy hop because we originally thought that they were looking at things.
Oh, there's another spy off.
Oh, that's a great spy hop right there. So they stick their heads out of the water. Sometimes their eye is above water, sometimes their eye is below the water. We don't really know why they do it. It could be to remove parasites. It could be to look around and see, oh, what's that boat, or who is that, or what whale is in the area. It could be a form of communication because when they go back down, they make a splash. So there's lots of theories, and because we can't really talk to the whales yet,
Right.
we don't really know exactly why they do that. We also saw some breaching behavior, and that's where almost the entire body comes out of the water, usually at least half the body. Humpbacks, their whole body will come out. And when they do that, they make a big splash. So that could be communication. It could also be play kind of behavior. They often see calves more often doing that. It could be another type of thing like, here I am, come mate with me. But that's really exciting when they do that because it's a big, huge splash and you see almost the whole body come out of the water.
So the two big activities occur here are giving birth, like
Right.
you were just talking about, but the other one is mating.
That's right.
And this is mating season.
It is.
So how do gray whales court? How do they
Okay.
date?
Well, that is a little bit different than humans. And what happens is you'll usually, do we have a whale by the boat? Usually we'll get 2 males and a female, and the 2 or 3 males
Right there,
are
right there. under
right
the boat.
here. Oh, here we go.
Wow, look at that. Look how big that is.
They're coming up. And
So-
actually, we'll get back to that, but you see the pattern on there. So
It's gonna come up, it's gonna,
each
gonna
whale
blow.
has a distinct,
there she blows.
nice. Each whale has a distinctive coloration pattern that you can see. And that's from rubbing on the sand and barnacles going on and off. Their pectoral fins have a different pattern. And the cool thing about that is that from many, many years of research, we actually have a photo library of the different whales and their different patterns, and they can tell individual whales from that. And from that, the reason why that's important is because they can get an estimate of the number of whales in the population, and that's how we can see, are the whales going up in population number or down in population. So that, and those patterns are really important for researchers to figure out, what's happening in population numbers.
So just then when that whale popped up,
Right,
it did a blow.
it did.
So what was that all that spray's coming out of?
Well, can we call it whale snot for now?
Sure, please.
Okay, so it's not really snot because they don't have congested sinuses. But what's happening is when they come up like that, those are actually the nostrils that are really on the back of their heads.
Oh, a spy hop.
Oh,
Spy hop,
nice.
right
Another
there.
slide off. And so when they're doing that, they're releasing carbon dioxide, just like when we breathe out, and then they're taking in a quick breath. It's actually faster than what we do. But when they release the carbon dioxide, it's very forceful. And so all of the stuff that's around their blowhole on their skin, like mucus for protection and oils, that comes out in the blow as well. Now, because they have 2 blowholes, you get a distinctive pattern of glow that comes out, and it actually looks like a heart. If you're in the front or
Oh, there it
behind the
was.
whale, just saw it.
Yep.
If you were in front or behind the whale, it would actually look like a heart. So
Okay.
Valentine's Day, we're getting a lot of mating. They have a heart-shaped glow. It's perfect.
Okay, so that nostril on top doesn't work like our nose, really.
Not really. Oh, we got a spy hop
Another
over there.
spy hop over
Yeah,
there.
it's going down. So it's a little bit different than ours because, well, first of all, it's on the top of their head.
Yep.
And that's because they want to be efficient when they're swimming. So they don't have to put their whole head out of the water like this. They just, put the top of their head and they can take a breath. But the key difference between their respiratory system and our respiratory system is that ours is connected to our esophagus. So if I was eating right now and you made me laugh and I took a breath in, I might start choking or
Right.
coughing.
Milk will come out of your nose.
Milk might come out of my nose.
gross.
They don't really do that, right? So their esophagus and their trachea are actually separate, completely separate tubes with no connection between them. And that is so important because that allows them to swallow and take a breath at the same time. So they can swallow with the surface and take a breath and not, because they really don't have time to do all of that, right? Oh, there's so much spy hopping going on the side of the boat. Yeah.
So the eye looks like it's right above the mouth.
It is, yeah.
So how good are gray whale eyes?
Gray whale eyes they're really good underwater. Remember, they make their living underwater all the time. They're very large.
Yes.
They're like that big. Well, hopefully we'll see one a little bit more close
Oh,
up.
look at all the spy hops.
Wow.
Ooh, wow.
Two
Spy
spy
hops.
hops over there. We got spy hops everywhere. They're really checking us out. And so their vision is very, very excellent underwater. And they also have pretty good vision in air as well. Because the cornea is so rounded, they really can see both in air and water. Better in water, of course, but they can also see in air. They also have an eyelid.
Oh, really?
And so before on the earlier version, the earlier live stream, we actually had a whale right by the boat for a long time. And sometimes its eye was open and sometimes it was just with its eye closed.
I'm pretty
It was
sure she winked
beautiful.
at me.
I'm pretty sure she did. Flirter. Yeah. So their eyelids can open and close just like ours can. They don't have eyelashes because our eyelashes are really in charge of making sure dust and dirt doesn't get into our eye. They don't need that because they can open their eye underwater.
And it's probably acting like a windshield wiper,
Yeah.
getting some mucus off,
totally.
or
Yep.
things like that. Okay, so their vision's probably pretty good. How about their ability to hear?
They can hear really well underwater, so they don't have any external ear pinnae like we do, like sea lions do. They don't have a hole or anything, but they do have the same ear bones that we do because we're mammals embedded deep in their head, and they can sense sound vibrations in the water, and they're very good at hearing.
So, but they can also vocalize.
They can
right?
vocalize.
Make sounds.
They can make sounds. They make grunts, whistles, knocks like this. They can hear that, bring them in.
Very soft.
Very soft. And so they can hear that and communicate with each other that way.
So those low frequency sounds travel really well through water.
They
It's
do,
dense
especially
medium.
salt water, right?
Absolutely. So, I mean, that's probably a really good communication system. But we don't really know their language yet, do we?
No, not really. It's very hard to figure out whale language because we can't keep them in captivity. So
Right.
most of the stuff we know about behaviors and why they do certain things and what they do is based on usually captive dolphins. And then we kind of make the leap to whales. So we don't really know what their communication is and what they're saying and what they're doing, although they can infer some things. So when the researchers study sounds and they see a behavior and a sound, they can link that together. And if they see that same behavior and sound linked, more than one time,
Right.
then they can infer certain things.
Got it. So I did notice, and you did mention that mammals have fur.
That's right.
They don't look furry, but they do have little whiskers
They
on their
do.
face.
They have whiskers. So for one of the reasons, well, the main reason why they no longer have fur like seals and sea lions is because fur actually is way better at keeping a body warm, but it doesn't work well when it's wet. And since they never come out of the water, their fur would be wet all the time and it would be heavy. So that's why they use blubber. But they do have one stiff hair that sticks out of a dimple. They have dimples all over the top of their head, and they have one stiff hair in each one of those dimples, and that allows them to sense water currents and things like that. So it's really a sensory system.
So like when I'm closing my eyes or I'm in the dark, I can feel wind blowing over my arm because the hairs are actually feeling that.
That's right.
Transducing that
Yeah.
signal.
And kind of like whiskers on a cat or a dog, like cats that are really fluffy and big, they have really long whiskers because they need to know, can I get through this space? So they're sensory organs.
Right.
They're essentially sensory organs, and they have those, if one comes close, we'll be able to see the dimples and the one stiff hair that comes out. We could actually touch them last time, so
Wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool. Maybe we'll get to do that again.
that would be great.
So the whales basically are coming down here. Mating is an important process.
Another spot.
And then basically the pregnant females are going where?
So the pregnant females will start to go north pretty much as soon as they become pregnant. They want out of here because they don't need to be here anymore. They need to go north to feed.
But where do they get birth here?
Oh, so pregnant females come and they go to the back parts of the lagoon, which are more shallow and warmer and have a higher salinity so that the babies, when they're born, they have an easier time getting to the surface. So they're in the back part of the lagoons, giving birth, and then they'll slowly make their way towards the entrance to the lagoon because they're teaching the babies how to swim and getting them strong, having them move against the current. And then eventually, after about 3 months, they're going to take off and start heading north to go back to start feeding. Because remember, the moms have lost a third of their body weight in fat. So, they need to get going, and the babies need to start putting on the pounds as well.
And build up the muscles. They're
Build
gonna
up the
need
muscles
that
they're gonna
long
need to. We didn't talk about the distance. So great whales are the longest migrators in the animal kingdom. Well, not because birds, the Arctic tern migrates 22,000 miles every year. But these are the longest marine mammal migrators in the world. And one way they migrate between 5,000 and 7,000 miles. So every year it's between 10 and 14,000 miles. Whoa! Look at that spy hop. That was close.
Oh,
So they have a lot of energy that they use up when they're migrating because it's, such a long migration. Right there.
so the great thing about whales is that because they have to come to the surface to breathe, researchers have used a technology called satellite telemetry, and they can tag the whales with these satellite transmitters that use powerful radio waves. And when the whale's at the surface breathing, that satellite transmitter is transmitting to satellites that are 200 miles in orbit.
That's right.
And then researchers get an email back with a latitude, longitude, time, date, and the ID of that whale. And they've given us an idea of the path they follow. Now, these whales are considered to be one of the most coastal ones,
That's
right?
right. Yeah. So because what they feed on is shallow water, they actually don't go in the open ocean like blue whales do. And another really interesting pattern is that when they are migrating northward, they hug the coast. They stay much closer to the coast. When they're coming southward, they need to hurry up and, come down here so that they can give birth. And so they actually make a beeline there. It's a more direct route and farther offshore. Sometimes, in fact, they don't even make it here. They give birth on the way.
Okay.
So, and then they got to bring that baby into these lagoons. So they'll maybe take get the northernmost lagoon to pop in there because they don't want to be out in the kind of the open ocean with that brand new baby. It's really hard on the mom and the baby for that.
Sure. And it seems like that when they're making that transit, they're not messing around. They're going from A to B.
Yep.
By the time they get to Alaska, they're foraging very intensely. How much time are they spending up there? And again, they have to take on a lot of weight, right?
Right. So they're spending, a few months up there, really, basically, as however long the water temperature is warm, they'll stay up there. And then they start migrating down as soon as the water starts getting colder. They're going to follow that kind of warm water line farther and farther down. But something that is really interesting is that, okay, the population is about 14,500 right now. Not all of those migrate down here every year. So they see maybe 300 or 400 per year down here. So not every whale comes down here every year because not every female is giving birth every year, and not every whale is mating every year.
Right.
And in fact, the females give birth every only 2 to 3 years. And so there are other females that are coming down that are becoming sexually mature. They come down, they get pregnant, and come back down the next year in order to another spot out in order to give birth. So not every whale migrates every single year.
Right. Well, and that kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
That's a long way to go.
Right.
A lot of energy
Right.
to spend if you don't need to.
Right, exactly.
So
Yeah.
I guess one of the other questions is when they're making these migrations,
Dolphin right here.
they're
There's a dolphin.
they're a saltwater animal.
Woo!
How do they get fresh water?
That's a great question. So the way that these whales get fresh water is by eating their food. So they don't go up to a hose or the river and drink water. Most marine mammals all of them except for two marine types of marine mammals actually just get their fresh water from metabolic water, which is from eating their food, and their body can get that fresh water, and then their kidneys are really highly modified in order to conserve whatever fresh water they get in and make sure that they keep that fresh water in their bodies so that they don't dehydrate. So they're not walking around with any kind of water bottles like we do, nothing like that. They're just eating their nice, watery food, and that's how they get their fresh water.
Extract.
Yeah.
So the animals that come in here and give birth, they give birth to their calves. How big is a baby when they're born?
Babies are about 15 feet and 2,000 pounds.
Okay, and then of course the mom is giving them lots of milk. About how much milk?
They get about 70 to 80 gallons per day of milk, that poor mom.
Now we notice when they biopsy that they don't really have lips. So how do they nurse?
That's a great question. So because the babies can't really go up and suckle on the mom, they'll put the end of their nose or end of their mouth really on the mom, and that indicates, okay, it's time for the mom to pump the milk out. And the mom has mammary glands. She has two mammary glands, just like we do. And there's a little slit in there, and the baby will press against that, opens up the slit a little, and the mom pumps the milk out of that mammary gland straight into the baby's mouth. We have two whales over here, by the way.
They're basically drinking gallons and gallons.
Drinking, 60 gallons, 60 to 80 gallons a day of milk.
And it has high fat content.
60% fat content. Yeah, they're trying to get that baby to pack on the pounds as fast as they can.
As fast as possible. But that blubber that we talked about is an insulator.
It is an insulator.
It's also energy storage.
Also an energy storage.
But if they have it, it also gives them some
buoyancy, right? So it helps them stay to the surface, because remember, they are mammals.
Yeah.
And they have to breathe air. And one of the issues with mammals, especially now, and gray whales, is that they get caught in fishing nets. The more people we have on Earth, the more food we need, the more we're doing fishing. They get caught in the fishing nets, and it drags them down. And if they can't get to the surface to breathe, they are not going to die. They're going to drown just like we would. So they're not like fish where they can breathe underwater. They have to come to the surface to breathe.
So here is our great guide, Scarlett. And Scarlett, you've been working here a while, right? How many years have you worked here?
4 seasons already here in San Ignacio.
And what got you interested in being a whale watch guide?
I don't know, because I'm come from the city, and I always been really interested in creatures of the sea. And then I went to study in Yucatan, sustainable coastal management. But there's not many big cetaceans there, so I knew this spot here in Baja. It's great for the whales. Actually, we have 8 of the baleen whales here in Baja. So this is the best spot to see them.
And then since you've been doing this, you kind of get to see lots of interesting behaviors.
Yeah.
So we've had whales come right up to the boat. The boat captains don't drive to the whales come to them. So why do they do that?
So as the doctor, she said, they are coastal whales. So my guessing is that they are used to the traffic of boats, so more than, for example, a fin whale or a blue whale. They are more skittish. That's one. And another, we don't know exactly why some individuals, they get curious. But when we observe the captains and guides, sometimes some of these whales approach from the boats, from the back of the motor, and they hang out there. So we don't know exactly if they kind of feel attracted to the sound of the motor or the vibration. Also, they are very sensitive with the touch. So they have a lot of barnacles and lice, and we have seen they scratching with the boats. And that's when some people, they take advantage, like, okay, and they pet the whale. So we don't know exactly if they are friendly. I would say they like to scratch. And I would say, now going every day, 3 times a day, we get to know them, and they have different personalities. Some of them, they are introverts. Some of them, they are extroverts, just as or dogs or even humans. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So one of the things that is really interesting is that gray whales really mainly do most of their birthing here. So they come here and give birth to their babies, which means they're Mexican, right? But then they swim through the US, they swim through Canadian waters, they go all the way up to Alaska, but they come back here. So this is a really important place, and Mexico cares about its whales. So what have they done to protect gray whales here?
So here, since, as you said, guys, like they come here for mating reasons and to nurse their babies, this is like really important. It's this like winter home for them. So that's why it's really important to preserve these areas. So here where we are right now in San Ignacio, it's a part of the Biosphere Reserve. It's a natural protected area, really important, and I think the biggest one in Mexico. And it includes not only San Ignacio Lagoon, but also Guerrero Negro. So yes, also on top of that, San Ignacio Lagoon, like the locals, they decided to protect more the whales on top of the federal regulations. So some of these locals, they decided to have some rules like to not have more than 16 boats at the same time. Other one is like we have schedules. It's not like I can go whenever I want. No. We need to come here from 8 to 5 p.m. And then this is how we give them some space to the whales because they also need to rest and have their intimacy. Also, another one is that we shouldn't have more than 2 boats per whale. Some of these are some ideas that locals decide to have. So in order to have good practices when we do whale watching.
But they learn that by watching, right? They've been learning from the whales for a long time. In fact, there's a couple of families that have been here doing this forever, and they know a lot about whale behavior. So it's really cool that they're the ones who have said, no, this is what we have to do because we have to be careful to take care of the whales. So if you were a student today and you wanted to do this, what advice would you give to a student who wanted to do something like what you do?
Yes. Well, you should be curious for sure and passionate, not necessarily like, of course, to study, but I think the key is to be passionate about it and curious. And even though if you don't have a lot of knowledge, you can study. And I always suggest, like for youngers, like if they feel curious, they can maybe join some volunteer programs to have the experience and get to know if they like it. But that's how I started.
See, and I think that's great. In fact, most people that are into this sort of thing get into this sort of thing by actually coming in the field and getting to see the animals. So this is an excellent opportunity. All right, Gwen, I have another question for you, and this one's been driving me crazy. So where do whales come from? So I'm a shark fan. I know that sharks have a very rich evolutionary history. They date back over 400 million years, but whales are relatively newcomers. So who did whales evolve from?
That's a great question. So whales originally evolved from an animal that is similar to the present day hippopotamus. And that started about 400 million years ago. And it took a long time, but its limbs, evolved into flippers, and its tail became, a regular tail instead of like more like a dog tail. And eventually it lost its hind limbs as it became more and more able to swim in the water. And about 34 million years ago, we saw a divergence of the 2 types of whales. So the 2 types of whales are baleen whales and toothed whales and dolphins. So the toothed whales and dolphins include things like sperm whales, orca, all of the dolphin species and porpoises. And then the baleen whales are whales that are highly adapted to feeding on plankton kinds of things. And that's what the gray whale is. So gray whale is a baleen whale. And instead of having teeth like ours, it has these plates of baleen, which are similar to our fingernails. And they come down in parallel plates, and they have fringes, kind of like a broom. And what they do is they will sieve things out of the water, or in the case of gray whales, they suck in the mud and sieve things out of the mud. Then they push that out through the baleen, and they take their tongue and they scrape the inside of the baleen, and then they swallow their food. So the cool thing about gray whales is that they're the only baleen whale that actually feeds in the mud. All the rest of them feed out in the open ocean or in the water column. And because they're feeding in the mud, which is, it's like sand, mud, coarse, their baleen actually wears down. And so you can tell which side the gray whale likes to feed on because they seem to have a preference. And most of them seem to like the right side. So they'll go down, swim down, they turn on their side, they scrape along the bottom, they suck in that mud, they push the mud out, and it concentrates the prey, the amphipods, the little tiny crab things on the inside of their baleen, and then they swallow that.
So that's why they have that kind of funny lopsided smile.
Yeah, that's why their mouth is so arched like that.
Right.
That's because of the baleen and the way the baleen is laid out. So they have a very arched mouth versus, orca have a regular mouth, and dolphins and sperm whales, it's like a regular straight mouth. Theirs is very arched. So they look really different from the toothed whales.
So I guess one of the things that I also find interesting is how well they move through the water. They seem incredibly graceful. So the fluke actually only has bones going to the middle.
That's right. That's the spinal column goes down towards the middle of the fluke, and the rest of it is made of cartilage, kind of like the end of our nose.
And that's why it kind of flexes when we see a whale tail come out. It flexes.
Yeah. And they're very powerful.
Oh, yeah.
So so if you look at the spinal column of a dolphin or a whale, especially a whale versus like a human, the whale has these long called processes that stick way high up the spine and down too. They have these transverse processes that also stick out far, and that's because the way they move is with muscles. So muscles on the top part will pull the tail up, and the muscles on the bottom tail down. They don't sit down or sit up. It's actually a pulling motion up and a pulling motion to get it back down. And that's all musculature, but they need big spine things sticking out of their vertebrae in order for them to have those big muscles.
But they seem so graceful in the water. So their pectoral fins or flippers are used kind of like boots of wood, right?
Yeah, they don't use them for propulsion. So those are really for steering and maneuvering. It's really just that tail that helps them water.
And of course, being energy efficient is the key because you've got to swim all the way to
That's right.
eating gas.
That's right.
So
So they're very streamlined when they have their flippers. The front flippers are against their body, and they don't have any external eyelashes. They don't have external ears. You saw the shape of their head. It's really kind of split shape. So the whole thing really is like an airplane shape. And that when their flippers are against their body, they're very streamlined, which makes them very efficient swimmers.
but when we touch them,
Yeah.
it almost feels like a memory foam pillow.
It does, yeah.
The skin's very soft and they're
Soft,
very pliant.
yeah.
So why is that?
That's just the way the
Everywhere.
blubber is. And when they put on a lot of weight in the summer, when they put on a lot of weight in the summer, I think that blubber kind of fills out a little bit. We're seeing them now when they've lost quite a bit of weight, and I think that's why it's a lot softer, more pliant to touch. But I think when they're, when they put on the weight, it's probably a lot stiffer. You can tell that because when you touch the nose of it, it feels a lot stiffer and
Right.
less pliant than if you are touching farther back on the body and it kind of goes.
Yeah. So they look kind of crusty. So what are those crusty like things?
So there are two types of hitchhikers that they used to consider parasites, but they're not parasites because they don't harm the whale in any way. So the first hitchhiker, the ones that have those that make the big yellow spots, are actually called the great whale barnacle that only live on these great whales. And they feed, the barnacles feed by putting their feeding appendages out into the water column. They love living on the great whale because the great whale's always moving. So there's another. So they get to feed like almost constantly, which is great for the barnacle. And then the other hitchhiker is what we call whale lice, and that's not like the lice that would be on your head. But they're a type of little like crab-like thing, crustacean, that lives right. It likes to hang on next to the barnacle, so that's something to hang on to. They're really important for the gray whale because what they do is they feed on the dead skin and they kind of clean up wounds. So they're like a living Band-Aid. Oh, wow, that was a great spy comment.
So basically it's like having a loofah sponge.
Kind of, yeah.
Loofah sponge on your skin, cleaning up all the dead cells.
And the whales do like to scrape them off because they itch a little bit. So that's why they'll come to the boat. They like to be scratched. They might scrape the barnacles off the bottom. They'll scrape them off onto the boat and things like that. So, but the cool thing about the barnacles is that when the whales are born, the baby whales are born.
Oh, right there.
Oh,
So cool.
sweet. They have no barnacles because the barnacle's life cycle is such that the barnacle, when the barnacle is a baby, it's a little larvae floating in the ocean. And so when they settle down, they'll settle down on the whale. So the babies are born completely kind of nude, without barnacles on them. But and they stay on the whale until they fall off, until they die and fall off or get scraped off. But the whale lice are transferred from the mom. So even like as soon as a day old, you're going to start seeing whale lice on the baby whales, and then the barnacles will grow. Lots of spy house.
So we can tell how newborn a newborn is, whether it has barnacles.
Right. So how smooth it is.
Right.
And we know that the barnacles life stage is such that when it's about an inch or an inch and a half across, we know that that's an adult barnacle. So we'll know so much stuff. We'll know that the gray whale baby is at least a year old if it has barnacles that are at an inch and a half across.
Very, very cool. Oh, look
Look at that. Oh, and in turn too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes when they do that, their mouths are open a little bit and you can actually see a little bit of baleen. Yeah, the other day we saw some baleen, but not quite so much today.
So all this activity that we're seeing here looks a lot like courtship.
It does look like,
Because there's like 2 or 3, maybe even 4 whales together in a group, and
they're looking at each other.
and maybe males are showing off, trying to convince the female, I'm the one you should mate with.
Yeah. So they're doing that, and there's going to be 2 males. These 2 males that will vie for dominance. They're trying to get to mate with the female, so they're going to be doing displays, postures. They're going to roll around a little bit. Sometimes they'll put their penis out and flop their penis around, and
Okay.
that's not to draw the female in.
Okay,
That's actually to decide who's going to be the winner that gets to mate.
so that's males competing.
That's males competing.
Got it.
And
got
then
it.
then whoever wins gets to mate, and the other male will stick around and help the female, help with the mating process, because remember, they have to breathe air, so they have to be supported and stay towards the surface of the water.
Now, didn't you say that females will mate with more than one male?
They'll mate with more than one male. So once the male has mated, he'll take off and go to the next female bar and check out a female, do some more posturing and maybe win. And
Wow, look at
Autumn's
the
big
city out there.
yeah, and he'll go and mate with other females, and the female will mate with other males. So once she mates once, it doesn't mean that she's done.
Right.
She's gonna mate with a bunch of males, and then once her body tells her that she's pregnant, she'll probably take off and go north to start feeding.
Very, very cool. So Kylie, I'm sure we have some questions.
We do have some questions, guys. All right. How do the whales know how to get here on this migration?
That is a good question. We don't really know, but we know that they're very, very intelligent animals. And since they're born here, they know, what the coastline looks like. So we think it's just some kind of cues. And since they do hug the coastline, they're not going straight across the ocean trying to find it. We think it's a learned behavior.
So they're kind of mapping out the coastline and
Right.
they know, here's the
Yeah.
canyon, I know I'm
Right.
here.
But
Wow.
remember, there are innate behaviors that mammals are born with. For instance, babies are born knowing how to cry, right? So they know how to cry to get their mom's attention, and things like that. So there are innate behaviors that these mammals are born with, and that could very well be some kind of innate thing that they're born with. And there's probably learning involved, but also they're born with that ability.
And that's probably important, because if the climate is changing and things are always changing, you may not want to go back to the same place.
That's
You may
right.
want to find a different place to go to. So we do know that things like whaling has occurred and it drove the population really low. So what was whaling and how did it affect gray whales?
So the whaling in this lagoon was in about the mid 1850s approximately. And they just had a field day when they came in here and found these whales. And at first it didn't really go that well because their blubber was not high quality. So remember, back in the 1800s, we didn't have electricity. So they used the whale blubber, they boiled it down, and they used the whale blubber to heat homes and to light lamps, like street lamps and things like that. And at first they didn't really like it because it wasn't as high quality as the sperm whale, but then probably the sperm whale population started declining. So then they found some more whales and they started hunting them nearly to extinction. And then in about the 1940s, the Mexican government decided that they had to be protected. And then in the 1970s, early 70s, we had the Marine Mammal Protection Act. So they've actually been protected for a long time. And the numbers we're slowly coming back until about 2019. So in about 2015, they saw the highest population in years and years, and that was 27,000. And then in 2019, the population started declining again, and they think the main cause of that is climate change.
So how is climate change affecting these whales? And that's a big drop.
That's a big
Right?
drop.
That's like 25%.
Yeah, that's 13,000 whales.
So how's climate change affecting the whale population?
So these whales feed on, their main prey are these things called amphipods, which feed on a type of plankton that lives right under the surface of the sea ice in the Arctic. When there's climate change and the sea ice is melting and there's no sea ice, that prey of their prey is gone. And so their amphipods that they're feeding on don't have something to feed on, so the amphipods aren't there. And then the gray whales have to feed on other things that may not be as calorically rich. There might not be as many of them. And so they end up starving. And we've had some years where we see lots and lots of skinny whales that are starving, and whales that actually die.
So one of the things that we always think of direct impacts, right? So whaling had a direct impact on whales because people went out and killed them.
Right.
But climate change is having kind of indirect effects that may take longer sometimes. In that case, rapid indications, but climate change is going to keep happening.
That's right.
So what other things do you think might happen to the gray whale population as climate change continues to warm the oceans?
Well, hopefully there'll be at least some that adapt to that. So maybe they'll switch, their source, and those will teach their young to switch food source. And so hopefully there'll be enough left that the population can survive, but we really don't know. I mean, it could be that they go extinct just like other mammals. We have another marine mammal down here in Baja, the other side of the Gulf, called the vaquita dolphin. I think there's only 7 of those left, and they are actually considered to be extinct. There might even be fewer than 7 right now. And that's a real issue. So in our lifetimes, we have seen many animals go extinct, and that could happen.
But there are other human impacts other than climate change that are affecting the whales, right? These are filter feeders. They're filtering things out of sediment.
Yeah.
We use plastic for everything.
Right.
How's plastic?
They take in plastic. They think they're hungry. They think it's food. They'll take in plastic, and it gives them no nutrition. So they are still hungry. So they take in more and more plastic, and it clogs their digestive tract. Another thing that happens is as we have more and more people on the planet, we need more and more food. We have more and more people fishing. We set more and more traps. They get entangled in fishing gear. And remember, they have to breathe air. So they have to come to the surface. And when they get entangled in fishing gear, it does 2 things. One is it may drag them down and prevent them from taking a breath. But another thing is, you imagine like walking through mud or having a rope tied to your foot and trying to walk and walk and walk. It takes so much energy to do that they can starve to death that way because they just can't get enough food, and they're using up all their energy dragging this big net along with them. So yeah, there's lots of impacts.
So there's a lot of things that I think we can do. So Kylie, are there any more questions? I'm sure there are.
Yeah, we definitely have more questions. Actually, we are seeing so much spy hopping behind you guys. Could you guys talk a little bit more about spy hopping? Why are the whales spy hopping? What are they looking at? Or can they see even when they're spy hopping out of the water?
Okay, so we don't know. That's a good question. And I'm just gonna say we don't know. There's a couple theories. One is they can see with their eye under the water and above the water. So they're probably communicating with each other. They're probably like looking around, seeing who's there. When they come back in the water, there's a little bit of splash. They can hear those vibrations. There's another one. I mean, we're seeing so much spy hopping, and I think it's personally related to mating.
Yeah.
Because they're all around doing the spy hopping, and I think maybe it's a postural display for mating.
Yeah, that very well could be. But
look, I can spy hop higher than you can, kind of thing. I should win the female.
So I mean, but these are things that we still don't understand.
Right.
And whales are hard to study.
That's right. Because we can't keep them in captivity, and we also can't ask them what they're doing. So
what other questions?
Hopefully one day we'll figure out how to ask them.
That's right.
Now, since we're talking a little bit about mating, could we tell the difference between male and female whales?
That's a great question. So if you had a whale side by side, you would be able to tell by the size because female whales are bigger than males. However, that's really hard to do when you're on a boat next to them. You can't really see. So if they don't have their male parts hanging out, then then it's really even harder to tell. Wow, that was such a great split up. But you can tell if you look at the underside surface of the whale, if you can see that. So females have their reproductive tract and their anus in one long slit on the underside of their body, like from here down. And on either side of that long slit, they have two little slits where those mammary glands are housed. Males have one little slit towards towards their belly button, that's for the male reproductive parts, and then one little slit towards the end, which is their anus, and they don't have the two little slits. But again, unless they're laying on their backs as they're swimming right by, it is very difficult to tell.
A whale just hopped right in between you guys. That was super.
Yeah, you know, it's
It's
like
cool
popcorn
to
out
watch
here.
from this side. Yeah. Okay, awesome. So we're also wondering, do males have any role in this migration? We know that they're coming down from Alaska, they're coming down to mate, but are they helping raise the young? Are they staying in family units? How does that work?
So males are, they just like to go to the bars and pick up the women and then take off. So there's no there's no male caring for babies at all. In most mammal species, that actually doesn't happen. Cats and dogs, same thing. There's no care by the male. And in fact, he mates with a female and he goes off, he finds another female. He doesn't actually even know which female is having his baby. So it's just, let's mate and run.
Lots of shenanigans are happening out there with the
Lots.
whales.
Lots of shenanigans
going on.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. How long is a whale drinking milk from its mother? And then how long is that calf staying with the mother?
Okay, great question. So the baby will drink milk for about 3 months. The baby will drink milk for about 6 to 8 months, and it's 3 months here in the lagoon, and then they start migrating. And once the mom says no more milk, so her milk dries up, she's got to start feeding again. She kind of cuts the baby loose, and she does not take care of that baby for the rest of its life. So she separates from the baby. She's taught the baby a little bit how to feed. They're not feeding out here, but she'll show it how to go in the sand here. And basically it's like, okay, you're on your own now, and the baby might stay with the calf, close to it up in Alaska, but really there's no baby care. There's no calf care. She's not really helping the baby at all up there.
So it sounds like different from orcas who we know kind of live in family units. It sounds like gray whales are not living in family units.
That's correct. They really separate, and orcas stay with their family for life. In fact, the grandmother is kind of the one in charge. And with gray whales, we don't see that. We don't see large aggregations of any kind of relatedness at all. If they do form a large aggregation, it's only because that's where the food is and they just happen to come together, but they don't stay together for life. They don't travel in big pods. They travel really singly by themselves. So yeah, not big family units like orcas.
Well, speaking of orcas, what are the predators of gray whales?
So there's only 2 predators that we know of gray whales. Humans are one of them. But because of the protections, we really, they're kind of protected from us. The subsistence hunters in Alaska, the indigenous people in Alaska, are allowed to hunt 140 gray whales a year, but in the past few years, they've only taken about 2. But the good news there for that is that they use every single part of the gray whale, so there is absolutely no waste. So the main predator really are orcas, and remember, that's part of the food chain, so they have to eat too. So while we may see footage that seems kind of mean, that's actually part of nature, and they have to eat just as well as every other animal has to eat. So the main predator would be the orcas, and that's usually on their migratory route.
Very cool. All right. I think we only have time for 1 or 2 more questions. I know we have quite a few students watching, and I would love to hear, Scarlett talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear how someone becomes a whale biologist, but also what other jobs are there for people who are maybe interested in the ocean or interested in whales, but don't necessarily want to be a biologist, or maybe don't want to be out on the water.
Okay, that's great. So to be a whale biologist, you kind of have to decide what you want to do. So if you want to be a naturalist on a boat, the best thing to do is to start getting experience when you're in high school and volunteer for whale watches, and then, you know, really go to school for marine biology and try to be strong in chemistry and math. That's the kind of cornerstone of all biology. And then you could work your way up. So you could be a researcher, you can teach. If you want to be a researcher, it's best to have a PhD, so you have to go through a lot more schooling. If you want to just work on the ocean and you don't care about whales in particular, there's so many things you can do. You can work at an aquarium. You can get a job as a consultant. You can try to get a job with the government, doing projects and being a field biologist. So there's so many opportunities out there, but the number one thing I would say would be to start early and start getting as much experience as you can, because everyone, you know, all the job agencies and places to get jobs are really looking for people that have experience on boats, you know, experience handling animals. Even if you wanted to like volunteer at an animal shelter, that even gives you experience. And for example, in Southern California, we have 2 marine mammal stranding centers, 3 actually. There's one in Malibu, one in Palos Verdes, and one in Laguna Beach. And you can volunteer to do shifts there where you're working mainly with seals and sea lions, because they don't have the capability to take in whales and dolphins. But if you live in San Diego, you can volunteer at SeaWorld and things like that.
And I think the other thing students have to remember is even if you're interested in whales or sharks, but you don't like being in the field, you get seasick and things like that, there are plenty of other opportunities.
Right.
Researchers are using all this great technology now, gather huge amounts of data, and we need people who have good math and computer science skills that can basically interpret those data. So you don't even have to come out here if you don't feel comfortable coming out here, but if you want to do research, being able to work with the data is really important. Wow, look at those whales. They're coming this way.
Right under the boat.
Actually, they really like that boat.
Yeah. The boat on
Yeah,
that
it's a
boat.
favorite.
It's a Suzuki.
Yeah, they like the Suzuki engine.
So funny. Oh, wow. Nice. Any other questions, Kylie?
I think we are just out of time. If you guys have some closing
Wow.
words you want to say to the viewers.
Yeah, so we want to thank everybody for joining us. Oh, there's a big whale tail.
Oh,
Right.
nice.
Oh,
Be
we're gonna
careful.
get a little splash.
Very powerful.
Yeah, see how flexible that is?
Yeah.
This is so cool. So we want to thank you for joining us. Hopefully you've learned something about great whales. Hopefully you'll want to get out in the field. If you ever get a chance to go on a whale watch, go check it out. We have to thank our guide and naturalist, Scarlett, who's done a phenomenal job teaching us about all these great things. We need to thank our captain, Adrian, who has been able to help us find whales and put us on whales. We want to thank Roxanne, our second camera. Yay! And then, of course, we have to thank our cameraman and our founder, Dan. So thank you, everybody. Oh, it's right here.
One last shot.
And of course, we have to.
Oh, nice. And there's the blowholes. It wants to say goodbye. It wants to say goodbye. We're going to be able to touch it.
All right.
So exciting. So exciting. There's barnacles. Wow. Beautiful.
Just hanging it out.
Beautiful.
Come to the boats.
That's awesome. Yeah. Both lovely. Guys, there.
Sorry, our camera just went a little wonky.
There.
We're getting it back.